Alright, we're going to do a build now of the Rave ENV. We're going to do an electric flybar version. So here we go. Rave ENV. So right now we're just going to check out what's in the box. Pull this open here. Rave is a great flying helicopter. I've got my 450 and it's my smoothest flying helicopter by far. Rave instruction manual. This thing is pretty extensive. It's got colored CAD drawings. There's some step-by-step sections in there. You're gonna have to kind of go back and forth. It's set up basically to show you how to build a nitro flybarred version. So there's a section, you know, in the back where it says, with the blue tabs here, where it's the electric setup, but it's got tabs so you can kind of go back and forth, and it's a great little manual, and it's got all sorts of tips and tricks along the way, and you can kind of set it up just the way you want it. Inside here, got all the different bags, separated straps, mounts, and each part is labeled. You know, this one's got the motor mount. This big bag here has a bunch of different subsections in it. It's all separated nice and easy. It's got a little step 1, step 2, step 3, and it follows along with the manual pretty well with, you know, this step 1, 2, 3, simple and straightforward. We got all the head stuff here, flybar paddles, frames. We're going to put these to the side and get those sanded off. Boom. In here, right side of the box, we've got our canopy. That sweet looking canopy. Got the orange color here. So we're going to leave this kind of wrapped up right now in this safe little soft packaging. I don't want to cause any dents or anything, so we're going to put the canopy to the side. But classic Rave canopy right there. Got nice little, that's a really stiff flybar rod. That's one thing that's just great about the Rave is the flybar setup. To me is just one of the best. It just makes it fly so smooth, and I just love the way these helicopters fly. So that's what we've got. We're going to get the bag separated, and we'll come back and we'll start here with step 1. Blades that I got for it. Obviously some nice little Radix YR710 SB. So these are supposed to be able to handle a little bit of extra smack. Little 12-tooth pinion here, Scorpion 6mm, and actually got myself an Align MX motor. I like the way mine performs on my 700, so you can see how it works here on the Rave. And the servos also kind of went a little cheap, but pretty good on those with the Align servos and Spartan gyros, what we're going to be putting on it. We'll be back to start step 1 here in a minute. Okay, now we've separated all the bags, the step 1, 2, 3, and 4, put all of them to the side. Now we pulled out bag step 1, open this one up, and we're going to go to the first part of the instruction manual. Make sure you've gone through this. You're going to read what all the differences are between the electric and the nitro, and just read through it carefully, because this manual will help you definitely get through the build and get it done right and get it done perfectly. So this bearing right here, we're going to put in these little plastic guys, put the hex bolts in here, get them ready to go. Along the outside, since these are plastic, I'm just going to put a little bit of CA in the plastic here just to hold the bolt so it doesn't end up doing any kind of free spinning thing inside there. So we're going to make sure we pull out this bag here, with all of these parts. A lot of them, you know, are for little later parts in this step, so we're going to make sure we put all this other stuff exactly where we know where it's at, and just pull out these parts that we're looking for. And in this bag, we're going to pull out the bearings, and then we're going to open this bag up and pull out the hex bolts. And I'll pause for a second. We'll get right back to that, and then get to the first part of step 1. Okay, now that we've got these little parts, the bearings and the little metal hex bolts separated, we're going to get these things ready. Like I said, just going to put a little bit of CA on this. Not a whole lot. I definitely don't want to put enough in there to get it on the bearing. And we just want to make it so it's not free turning inside of here. Put your hex bolts in there. And same thing over here, just a little bit of CA. Definitely don't want to overdo it. Spread along there. Dry it out a little. And make sure, see, there's going to be an indent facing up, and then one side's going to be completely flat. Make sure you match those up so that, you know, they're both the same. Then press this together, and they'll fit like that, nice and perfect. Make sure your bearings are moving nice and smooth in there. And then you're going to do the same. There's 2 more of those, and then you're going to want to get those done. And step 2 of part 1, you're supposed to put these little screws in the standoffs for the canopy, but these screws are already in here. It's got some thread lock, so that part's already done for you. So then we'll have to move on to creating the little tail slider component. But first we're going to just go back and get these guys finished, and then we'll come back and put this guy together. Okay, now that we've finished these bearing blocks up, I found that it's actually easier to just kind of put them together and then slide the hex bolts through. They slide through much easier that way. Got those together. Put these guys together. Those are already ready to go. Next thing we're going to need to do is put together this little tail pitch axle portion. So we want to make sure we pull out our handy dandy calipers, measure out ourselves the 14mm screw out of the bag. Make sure you've got a place to put all your stuff, and that you're grabbing all the right sizes, and that you're listening to what it says in the manual. So what we're going to have, as it says here, that we're going to have some thread lock, some blue thread lock on the end of it, because it's going to be going into a metal piece. The little spacer, a bearing, this little spacer that goes inside, another bearing, and then it's going to go onto this end piece on the side where the little nub is coming out of here on the metal piece. You got to make sure that you follow that directly, and then these are going to be, these little ball link ends are going to be here on these ends. So just like the picture says, there's one up here, one down here. So line it up just like the picture. This followed by the washer and the bearings, get it all screwed in there, and make sure that you're screwing it into the side of this part that has the nub, because there's one side that doesn't have a nub. Over here it's nice and smooth. Make sure you're screwing into the other side, and that you're going metal into metal, so you're using blue thread lock. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to get that on here, and we're going to come back and show how smooth it is and move on to the next step. Okay, now that we've got this thing together, I put a little bit of CA on the ends of these, screwing metal into plastic. A little bit of CA helps to hold it on a little bit better. You got to make sure you have the washer in there as you're supposed to, the bearings as you're supposed to. Make sure you follow along with the manual with the order, and that it's moving around nice and loose the way you want it to move. These ball link ends, or these balls for the ball links, are facing on the bottom towards this, and we got it in the nub. Another thing not to forget, make sure you clean the oil off of the screw before you put the thread lock in it and put it all in there. I'll show you. This is, just from cleaning off the next 8 screws for the next step. This is what the oil that I got off it. So the thread lock's not going to stay on so well if you've got all that oil, so it's always best to just make sure you put some alcohol in a piece of paper towel and get it off the screws. The next part, now that we've got this little tail axle part here, we're going to start putting together part of the frame. So before we do anything with the frame, what we're going to want to do is use some really fine sandpaper, and we're going to sand the end of the frames. Just give it a nice little sand over the whole thing. Inside here, anywhere you might be running wires, because the carbon can conduct, and it can ruin your wires on your servos if you've got something against it and there's vibrating that's happening. So you want to make sure you go in there and you get that all nice and cleaned up. I'm going to go and do that, and then make sure it's facing the correct direction, the way it's supposed to, with the tank spacing here in the back. And you can see the servo mount's going to face forward. Just like the manual, we're just going to build it. We're going to start with just one half, and we're going to build the right side. We're going to put this tail axle right here on the frame the way it's supposed to be. There's a couple holes down here in the frame. We're going to put that on here. Okay, so see how we've got it kind of goes down and to the right, this part that goes down to the right on the frame. Make sure you've got that correct, because this thing isn't perfectly linear. We're going to make sure that it's facing the frame that way, exactly the way it says in the manual. So we'll come back and we'll review and make sure that we've got that all screwed in there correctly, and that we've got the frames in here. Make sure you use blue thread lock, and make sure on the frame, see how the flange is facing towards the outside, the bigger part. Make sure you've got that right. The flange is already on the frames, so just make sure that you've got that set up correctly. And again, I'm going to come back and review, and when we review, we'll show how it's supposed to look once it's all done correctly. Okay, now the finished product here on half the frame. One thing you got to pay attention to is right here how it says the flat surface is up on the very bottom one, and then the raised surface on the bearing block is up on the top 2 bearing blocks. So smooth on this one, smooth on the bottom of this one, and then smooth on the bottom of this one, and then the raised part on the bottom, and then raised part on the top of the top 2. So make sure that you follow those. I haven't cranked these too tight. When we slide the main shaft through, we might have to do some adjustments just to make sure it's nice and smooth. Make sure that this flange, the bigger part, is facing on the outside on the frame. Make sure you've gone over the whole thing with sandpaper and it's nice and smooth, and it's not going to cut you. If you do that, be careful. You don't want to get little fibers in your mouth and breathe them in, so make sure you cover your mouth when you do that. And this little tail pitch axle is in here the way it's recommended in the manual. So see how we've got these little holes here. We got 3x8 screws all the way around the bearing blocks right here, and then these 2 on the very bottom, these 2 on the very top, and this guy's moving nice and smooth. Okay, so now we'll go and move on to the next step here.